Hey guys, this is video number 3 of a series for renovation extension workflow with PlusDesignBuild, and I'm going to run you through multiple things from going through consultants, how I'm dealing with council, surveyors, engineers, interior designers, and how they actually all work together in the model so I have a central source of truth. So stick around guys. The last 2 videos, just if you weren't aware, the last 2 videos actually, one went through getting started and the basics of starting to draw. And then the last video that I did actually just went through, how we sort of roughly conceptualize to get to the point I'm about to show you next. So let's have a look. Alright, so now I actually have a model, and you'll notice it's not pretty really. It's just what do I need to do to ensure that the project's feasible? What do I need to do to ensure that it can be built? And what do I need to do to ensure that the client, in this case, my wife or the finance minister, is happy with what it is that we're going to do? And for me, what is it we're going to do to ensure that we can build it? Right. So all of this information has been created inside of the 3D model, and I use PlusDesignBuild in SketchUp, guys. I'm sure you're probably aware of that. And we started to actually create elevations for council. Well, in this case, I've actually haven't put it into council just yet, but what I've done is I've created elevations for that. But I really needed to, before I actually went to for authority approval, I really needed to ensure that it was buildable. Now, I am a builder. I come from background of construction, but you know what, I don't know everything about construction, and regardless, my authorities require an engineer certificate for particular types of work. So I really wanted to ensure myself, inside of everything that I knew, that how I was going to go about this. So what I did, I did reach out to my local authorities and understand what was required, the zoning, to ensure that what I was going to do wouldn't get knocked back if I lodged the plans. But I also asked what it was that I required when I lodged those plans, and they told me, and you're going to find the same thing. So speaking to your local authorities first about what you require to lodge plans will get you one step further. So in this case, I was told that I'm going to need engineers, I'm going to need a builder's license. Fortunately, I'm a builder, or an owner builder's license if you're not. I was going to require from the engineer, he needed a geotech report. But I didn't really want to get a geotech report first, so we had to make some assumptions up front. So let's have a quick look at what I actually produced and sent to the engineer. Where are we here? Okay, so let's just go back up a few plans here. And this is the first preliminary set of drawings that I sent across. So I had original drawings on this particular house. Because it is Reno extension, and that was kind of handy, I applied to local authorities to get them. And then I really wanted to make it clear what we were going to do. Now, in an ideal world, we're using engineers that are actually 3D proficient. However, in this case, and something you guys may or may not be aware of, that older engineers don't over-engineer because they've done it so many times. Yeah, the downfall with the older, more experienced engineers is that they don't get involved in technology. Newer engineers, we could have done a Zoom, I could have sent them a model, and they could have made comment on that model before we even engaged them in a contract. However, I created this set of drawings, as I said, and essentially with these drawings, I sent them to them via email. I actually sent it to 3 engineers. One come back with a quote of $7,500, one come back with a quote with $1,850. And then the other one's in the middle. So I met up with the engineer this morning on site. He'd had a look at these plans. I actually had my laptop plugged it into a TV and just explained things. And I got a bit of tape, marked it out on the ground and said, this is where the renovation and the turret's going to happen. This is what we're going to do. He was pretty impressed because in a very preliminary set of drawings that I basically knocked together, I pushed export, I'll just show you that, go to here, go to all. Essentially all I did was I clicked on this button here, which created a set of 2D documents for me, and I just chose the paper size. I chose what scenes that I wanted to be in there. So for instance, a scene is essentially what part of the model I wanted to look at, in this case elevations, and I sent them to her and I quickly just wrote things over. You can see that I've written beam numbers in there and so on, because these are things I wanted the engineer to have a look at for me. So this is the first set that I sent him. The second set that I sent him, I'm going to send him, I'm just preparing now, and you'll notice I've I used a piece of software called Design IT. It enabled me to size all of my engineered timber so that I didn't have to pay the engineer to do it, but I'm going to get him to throw his eye over these drawings, and basically he'll do a certification of my drawings, which also saved me the drafting of the project, because the engineer goes, I can draft it, but your drawings are better than mine. Why don't I just certify your drawings? That's the ideal situation out of an engineer, guys. So, you notice I also have demolition plans. I did send them to the engineer. Cross sections, which basically enable me to show, what it is that we're going to do. Let's see if I can get down a little bit more. And you'll notice that I've got beam size and everything in there, but that's sort of what I did because I'm a builder. You can get the engineer to do it, just going to cost you more money as you go. Being that it's my house and I know how to do it, I did it myself. Same would go with kitchens and so on. So engineers is number one. However, before I even move forwards into council again, I'm actually engaging an interior designer. And again, unfortunately, this lady isn't tech savvy. Let's have a quick look and see if I can show you. This is what I got. So I did run her through the model as well. And I actually quickly printed out just a floor plan and said, this is what I want to do. The reason why I use an interior designer is because they do this every day. They're up to date with the local trends. They do room layout and they do it more efficiently than I can. And whether it's a client you're building for or you're building for yourself, you want to ensure that what you deliver is worthy of taking a photograph later, because you can use it for marketing and so on. So I always engage an interior designer. My justification is if I get the paint wrong once, I basically save the price of the interior designer. Okay, so let's go back to the model here, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we got to this stage of the model, how I go about organising it, how I go about ensuring that I can get a feasibility study out of the model before I go and waste money lodging it through authorities. Organisation, guys, is the key. Let's have a quick look and see if I can just show you my folder structure. I have the job name. I have a couple of things that I'm working on right now. I have an archive because I don't just create one model, I copy paste in place. I'm going to explain that to you because it makes a huge difference to the way you can work on a model, and we'll quickly talk about that. I also have the colours that the colour consultant assigned, and you'll notice inside of here that I just have some textures that she told me we wanted to use in the kitchen, and I might quickly just show you that now. Let's go here. I'm just going to go through, I'm going to turn off a whole heap of stuff. And if you're not using levels, guys, there's a time and a place to use them. But essentially what these do, I'll just go and turn these off, is that they separate the model down for me. And you can see that I have a kitchen there. And if I went back to that file, these are the textures that I imported onto the kitchen, just so my wife could understand what it is we're going to do. And you'll notice that there's a couple of textures that aren't used that we decided the colour consultant thought they would look great. I put them inside of the model. My wife didn't like them. So at the end of the day, we all know who the boss is. So we have all of these things inside of the model now. So interior designer allowed me to choose my tiles, associate the product inside of the model, and have a bit of a brief look at how everything was going to go. And we can turn all of this stuff back on as we go. And it's just a really clean and efficient way of doing it. But I mentioned before copy paste in place. Copy paste in place is essentially a method of being able to use different models. I could have just clicked all on. Use different models to do different things. And I actually have several models open. And so what I did is I actually created my texture and I put it in here, but how did I get it from here back into the model? Well, the answer is that if I went into here and said delete this, say, and I went back to my model and I actually went inside and I'm going to just open up the door here. I'm going to select the flooring, I'm going to go copy, Control C, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go edit paste in place. Guys, I use this all the time. Now what that means is that I can go through and change the texture, and guys, just in case you weren't aware, you can go and select the texture that you want to change, and you're in materials here, and I might quickly go through this in a second, and then you can edit it. And I could change the color if I wanted to, or I could change the texture. So if I went in and chose a texture that I chose from that, and let's just say, here's one I did, and go open, it added the texture to it. That's one way to do it if you want to do it really quick, just for feasibility or just for viewing. However, adding that texture into our model via the PlusDesignBuild tools is what you can do to get a feasibility study. So it didn't take me long before I quickly knew, and I can get some quick prices on this job to ensure that it's going to be feasible. And if I went over to this file, you can see I've copy pasted in place several things. And basically what I did is I quickly just did my finishes on my floors, because there's a fair amount of square meters. There's 200 square meters of tiles or more in this. And the original tile that the interior designer chose was much more expensive than if I actually went and actually chose one that was very similar down the track. So the bill for the tiles went from $18,000 to $9,000. I saved the time it took me to do this, you know, in a snap. But if it was a client's job, you would obviously make some of that in profit. So charging for everything I'm doing is, when you're dealing with a client, is so important, and explaining to the client what you're charging for and how it can actually save them money enables you to run through this process, get paid for it, get a really good understanding of the project, get the client to have a really good understanding of the project, but more importantly, ensure that you get happy clients at the end of the day. And this is what this is doing. So you might be going, man, I haven't got time for this stuff. No matter what, eventually you are going to quote this job. You can defer it to down the track, or you can do it as we go. And I think that the best thing is that the software is parametric, which basically means if we want to change the pitch of the roof, or the client wants to make a change and they don't want to have certain things inside of the model, well, that's no big deal. We can change things around as we go, and it updates the price as we go. And that's the key to efficiency, is before we spend money on things that aren't necessary at this stage, let's get them sorted out in the model. And as I move forwards with this project, I'll continue to show you guys my process and tell you how I go about charging for it, because it's the most efficient way to build a project. It's the way to get your business to, a good profit margin. If you're an architect, this is a great way to do a specification for the client, and if you're actually doing project management, this system works quite well as well. But we're doing it in 3D, and the benefit is that this model is the central source of truth. This model is where I'm actually adding all of my vendors. And if I went back to that folder, go back to here and back to here, you'll notice that I also have vendors, which is essentially a spreadsheet of all the people that I'm going to utilize or I'm getting quotes for to do this job, including the engineers, including authorities, including the carpenters, the tilers and everything like that. This file is associated with the job, so that if anything ever happens down the track and we need to go back on warranty or something like that, I can go back to my vendors list, which is basically exported from my takeoff, and we can utilize that, ongoing for maintenance for the whole lot. Let's have a look at, where are we? Yeah. Okay, so vendors up inside of PlusDesignBuild. If you click on vendors and you export your vendors and import your vendors, we'll get into quoting and pricing in a lot more detail in the next video, guys. But at the moment, if you've got any questions about what I'm doing so far and you don't know how I got to here, ask them below, because it will help me in the next video ensure that I do this off the cuff, guys. I don't have a written out script. So I think that I've covered everything I need to, but let's have a quick look at the model. I'm just going to close some of this stuff down. And one other thing I wanted to talk about was site plan. So the next person that you're going to need before you lodge is either a surveyor. Now, if it is an extension and renovation and you do have knowledge of the boundary or survey points, you can put in dimensions to those survey points. I use near maps. You can actually see I've got a high resolution map here. Just a tip on near maps, guys, if you're going to do it and to access it, you would go up into PlusDesignBuild and you would go into your scene tool, and it is here. The help is here, guys. Every tool has help, but essentially I went and imported an near-map file. I saved that file separate because I want to use it over and over. I want to cut it apart. I want to do a whole other thing. So I've just got an original near-maps file stored in my folders as well. I created my scenes, and that's what gave me all these things across the top, and actually customized my scenes. I quickly want to talk about scenes. So here's my site plan. If I push Shift Z, it'll give me my full site plan, and I could update the scenes to suit myself. But these scenes are automated via the scene tool. The next one is my proposed slab plan, and you'll notice that I just have my existing slab. If I click on it here, I've got existing slabs and new slabs. And as we move forwards, I've got a basement floor plan, and it's cross section, which I use the section hatching tool, which also hatched in layout for me. I've got my floor plan. Notice I'm not dimensioning inside of SketchUp. I actually do it in layout. Well, PlusDesignBuild automatically sends dimensions across to layout, and I just delete what I don't want. Roof plan, elevations. If you don't need some of these scenes, you simply go through and delete them. And I'm going to show you one in a second. Sections, I align my sections. So you'll notice that it's just a cross section of that building. It's actually a live section. So when I make a change, the section updates. However, these sections, I need to position them. And when you actually use the scene tool, it'll create sections for you and you position them. And if you actually, you'll notice here that I have my sections tool on, and we'll go through these in a minute. If I click here, it highlighted the section, and if I wanted to move the section, I choose the orange one and I move it to wherever I want it to be inside of the model. So I'll quickly just move this now. Right, and you'll notice that it's sectioning where I want it to be. So once I'm happy with that location, I just basically go right click update scene. Right, I'm going to Control Z it because I actually want that where it is. And that's how I'm getting these section cuts through the model. Section through the turret, and for me, guys, I come from carpentry background. Masonry engineering, I don't know enough about it. I'm actually going to core fill blocks in here. I've actually drawn in my drawings and started to get into the second one. I think I've got it here. Where is it? There. I'm going to do sections in here, and I'm going to say to the engineer, I want you to, give me some detail on this so I can draw it in. Then he's going to certify the plans. I think we spoke about that earlier. Okay, so before I get onto these tools, I'm going to one other thing that I did do that I haven't mentioned yet, guys, and I'll just see if I can bring in a screen. I actually did some renders. Now, let me just say, if you're working for a customer, you should pay a professional to do renders, but I'm actually working for my wife. We're going to make changes as we go, basically. And let's see if I can just bring this in here for you. Okay, now 3D renders. You noticed here that we've got these pretty pictures basically of what it is, and I've just copied and pasted them just so I could show you guys. But I took a whole heap of screenshots and renders of the project so I could see what it was that I wanted to. I probably shouldn't be messing with it live, but what I wanted to explain to the engineer. You can see it's just a preliminary screenshot, a section through there, and it's like a scrapbook, I guess, of things that I use. And here you can see I've got an assumed engineered required. I asked for feedback on this type of stuff and a phone call to the engineer just to quickly talk about some screenshots I sent. Is a really good way to ensure that what you're designing initially can actually be built. And the more rapport that you have with a engineer, the more time they'll give you because it's ongoing work that you're delivering. Right, so let's get back to SketchUp. Renders, guys, just my one word of warning with renders. I spent more time messing about with photorealistic renders than I did actually designing the job because you get caught in it. You know what? I think the SketchUp delivers all we need to actually see, but when you're talking to a customer and you want to start to give them finishes, guys, you can find renderers they'll reach out to you. You're probably getting emails from them. If you can get a render done for $100 or something like that and put your margin on top of it and sell it to the client, it's better than you spending your own time, because you'll feel guilty charging for the amount of time it takes you to learn. Alright, so guys, I'm back inside of SketchUp. You'll notice I have my PlusDesignBuild toolbar there. That's the one that I used for doing all of this drawing pretty much after my initial concept stage. And you'll notice that the tools that I have here, I have the section tool, I have my views, and I keep my toolbar very slim because I need more screen space, and I use large tool set. Right? I dock them. If you find that your toolbars aren't going where you want to do, once you have them in a position that you want, you need to go File and save the model. Even if it's an untitled model, just save it anyway. I also have my default tray. Now, I'm using Windows, guys, and it is nice that you can dock it over to the side. If you're using Mac, you need to go to the Window tool, and you can select Entity Info is something I use all the time. And basically what Entity Info enables me to do is actually figure out what tag I'm actually on. So tags, you'll notice I have materials, which basically enables me to change colors. And if I was going to change this into a customer model, I'd probably actually select the material, edit a material, and I would probably turn the texture off and make it white or something like that. Right? So I use materials all the time. Components is where I actually save my vignettes, and you'll remember back in the first video how we went about using vignettes, but I also save bathrooms and kitchens and all of the things that I'll use again. I use the BIM tool so that when I bring them in, I already know what they're going to cost. Styles, which essentially enables me to change whether we're going to work in colors or so on, but you'll notice up the top here, instead of going to styles all the time, I just have this styles here. And guys, if you're not sure how to get it, right click up here in Mac and you'll be able to go through and choose what you want. It opens up a slightly different window, or you can go in Windows, View, Toolbars, and choose the toolbars that you want. You'll notice that the PlusSpec 22 or PlusDesignBuild 22 is in there as well. All of these tools go together to help me move. The next thing is, guys, if you're a builder or you're a draftsman or anything, if in the old school draftsman, you had to have a good quality drafting board to get your work done efficiently. If you're a builder and you come from a carpentry background, you don't go and buy your drills from Kmart. You buy quality stuff. So I'll quickly show you the specs of my computer, and feel free to do a screenshot if you want to. The most important thing here is I don't have a huge processor. It's 2.6 gig, and I think it tops out at 4 without getting too geeky here. But I don't have a whole heap of different cores. It's only a 6-core machine. Take a screenshot of this. I've got 32 gig of RAM. I do have a graphics card, which is an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660, if that helps you out, guys. These are the tools. This computer is around about $1,500 or $1,600, and I have 2 really good quality screens because I look at a screen all day. It's amazing how much difference a good quality 4K screen makes to what you do. As far as other tools, I think we spoke about this. I have a measurer that I use. Believe it or not, the good old tape measure. This comes in handy. Every day I use it a lot. And I also have some other software. I have Adobe, but you can use Google Docs or whatever to look at your PDFs. I use a 3D mouse sometimes, and I think that's about the majority of everything that's taken me to get here. So look, from a setup point of view, if you spent $2.5, $3 to get most of your tools together to get this done efficiently, it's better than going and spending $500 or $600 at the local appliance store and then realizing after 6 months you haven't bought a good enough computer to do the job. My granddad always said, buy cheap, buy twice, and I believe it because I've been guilty of doing it myself. Guys, again, if there's any questions, ask them below. I'm going to put in some links below also as well so that you can get access to some of the stuff. There's one other tool that I do use all the time, guys. It's called Fast Stone Capture. I use it every day. It enables, that's how I got that tile. I took a photo with my phone and I placed it together. You can see there's a terracotta tile. These are just things I wasn't prepared to show, but this software here is called Fast Stone Capture. It's about $20. It's a perpetual license. I use it just even for instructing the developers what I want done next in PlusSpec or PlusDesignBuild, and you can see that these kind of things help me get a whole heap of things done. So guys, I'm going to leave you on a structural image. One last thing, if you want to know the difference between existing and new, if you go Control A inside of the software, everything's red's existing, won't be estimated, everything's blue, will be estimated, and essentially that enables me to get my job quicker as well. The next video we're going to go into pricing, we're going to go into a whole heap of other things. So if you've got any requests, ask them below. If you like the video, push like. If you dislike the video, push dislike, but tell us why. The idea of all of this is getting you guys more efficient with PlusDesignBuild and building information modeling for your own business. So hopefully you guys can get to a profit margin that enables you to have holidays and retire early. All right guys, cheers.